how do we know that we're eating foods that are healthy for us? How much does intuition come into play? And how do we know that what we're getting from our intuition really is trustworthy?
I think that intuition, it plays a very big role in that. And that's why I really like the whole mindful eating and seeing how you feel, because you could be given a diet or told that this is the best thing for you. But if you don't feel well when you're eating it, then it doesn't really matter what experts say. So I think you have to go by your energy levels, your vibration after you're eating it, getting in tune with your body. A lot of people are not in their body. And once you get more in your body, you're going to know what fuels you and makes you feel good. So I'd say go by what you're talking about, like what you feel. And intuitive eating is really a big part of health.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Danielle Pashko with us on the show today. Danielle's a functional medicine nutritionist and chronic illness coach with 20 years of experience. She specializes in weight loss, digestive health, women's health, Lyme disease, and long COVID. Her own health transformed only when she embraced ancient healing practices. So I'm eager to learn her techniques and how she incorporates the spiritual side of the equation. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go talk with Danielle. Danielle, welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled you could join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here too.
The name of your website is Soul Hacker. What's a soul hacker?
Well, it's a little bit of a play on words of biohacking. If people are not familiar, it's when someone hacks their biology through doing different modalities, and people are very familiar with upgrading their health through maybe infrared saunas or cold plunges or red light therapy. And all of those things have merit and I appreciate them. But I work with a lot of the chronic illness community, and I find that these biohacks are good for healthy people to make them even more healthy. But for someone who's dealing with a chronic condition, it's not necessarily so simple to just do these external methods to upgrade your biology. A lot of times, chronic illness is caused through things like trauma, emotional dysregulation, stress, lack of spirituality. So Soul Hacker is really helping people to tap into the essence of their soul. And I believe, because it's been my own experience, working as a practitioner and also being a patient when I had my own struggles, that you need to tap into the growth of your soul and get into working on that for healing. So that's where I came up with the name.
I love it. When I saw it, I thought, whoa, this is fabulous. I thought it was very creative.
Thank you.
And spelled soul, Hakker. I thought, oh, she's getting really fancy here. Probably just to get the domain name, but it was very creative. I loved it. And I completely agree with you. In all the energy healing work that I do, there's always a component of an emotional something going on. And it's always in place before any kind of disease or illness sets in. That's been my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I, like you, believe it's the most important part of the healing, because we can fix body parts all day long. But it's also been my experience that we leak energy when we are holding on to an emotional whatever. And
Definitely.
and so, if you still got a leak, what's the point of
Right.
fixing body parts? So we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
You also say that healing starts with the nervous system. What do you mean by that?
So the nervous system is comprised of, we have the sympathetic nervous system, where is the fight or flight, and many people are stuck there and they can't move to the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, but the more the relaxation response. And it's for a healthy person, it's normal to fluctuate from sympathetic to parasympathetic. But for many people who, especially in today's world, if you're an empath, even more than anything, whether you have a situation or you're just very sensitive, you may be living in the sympathetic and the constant fight or flight, and really getting in control of your emotions is a key to regulating your health. And I find that working with people, even if I even if they have the greatest doctor, I'm not anti-traditional medicine. I think Western medicine has its place, and I think the wellness community has its place. But if someone is in such a stressed condition, no matter how brilliant the treatment is, it's hard for it to take unless they have a regulated nervous system and they can manage their stress. And once they start to regulate the nervous system, these modalities tend to work a lot better. So the supplements may work, or the medication may work better, or whatever kind of therapy you're doing. Once you have a regulated nervous system, you're going to have a lot more success. So that's where I think is a foundational part before doing anything. I think really working on the stress response.
How does somebody that, and I know you've had chronic illness, and I want to do a deep dive on that here in
Yeah.
a little bit, but is it possible? Let me rephrase that. Is everybody that's dealing with a chronic illness, is their nervous system out of whack?
I think to some degree, there's a stressor that created this. There was some kind of stressor or event that happened that made their situation more chronic. So, for example, if someone's dealing with, um, for me, it was Lyme disease, but I've seen people who have it who are bit by a tick. And if they have a strong, robust immune system and maybe they're emotionally regulated, it may not even affect them. It's really about the host. And if that host is strong and resilient, they may have no effect. And then suddenly something else can come along, a breakup, a loss of a job, something, COVID, right? Something happens, and suddenly the nervous system becomes dysregulated. And what happens is now you're presenting with symptoms. This can also happen with people who have autoimmunity, or I've seen people who have maybe Epstein-Barr, the virus that causes mono, or also can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome, um, cytomegalovirus, things like that. It could be these dormant viruses that are in your body. A lot of people have them. Maybe they had them as children, and they're dormant. And now this stressor occurs, and this emotional dysregulation happens, and this nervous system dysregulation happens. And now, boom, now suddenly you are presenting with symptoms of illness. So I do think that it plays a role in most situations, even in like glucose dysregulation. If your nervous system is not properly working, it can affect your hormones, your cortisol levels, your ability to sleep, your glucose. So yeah, in most situations, even inflammation, that it can be causing chronic pain. So it plays a role, I think, in pretty much every aspect.
I agree, and it begs the question, is it the chicken or the egg?
Yes.
Because when your immune system's fighting something, and I'd love your take on that, on this is just my perspective here, but when you get stressed out with any one of those situations that you just mentioned, what happens? Our cortisol levels go up, which causes increased inflammation, which causes stress, which causes all this cascade of different symptoms to come up, and the body's going, "Whoa, what do I go after first?" Yeah. So it sounds like you agree with that, that it's like it can be either or. But I find if somebody's in a lot of pain, they're just stressed from the pain as much as anything, let alone the emotional stuff.
Absolutely. And it's not like I'm saying that all these things are psychosomatic. And if you're stressed, that means you're going, that's where it comes from. I hate when physicians make patients feel like, oh, it's just stress. If you just relax, go on vacation, it's going to go away. It's not as simple as that. It's just that if you're working on daily practices to keep the emotional regulation. And also I do a lot of movement, especially Tai Chi and Qigong, and that helps with grounding And it also helps with the nervous system and a lot working on proprioception, and it helps with neuroplasticity, and it really helps the body to work on healing. But it's a daily practice. So it's not something like you can, just go away on vacation and be done with it. It's something that you need to like build up your life force by doing certain practices. And I know there's lots of brain retraining programs for nervous system regulation, but I find that doing those without incorporating the movement and the reinforcement, it doesn't always stick. So I think that the movement with doing these types of practices really help the patient or someone really feel a lot better.
Tell us about your journey. Why did you go into the functional medicine arena to begin with? And then what was the catalyst for you to say, okay, all this stuff that I know, all my expertise is not working. What happened? And it wasn't working, which led you obviously to explore some new methodologies to help yourself heal. And in turn, you became an expert at it. And now you help others around the world do the same.
So people think that from having a health issue is how I got into this. It wasn't. I had a very sick mother when I was a little girl, and she had she had breast cancer since the time I was 8 years old, and she wasn't getting a lot of help going through the traditional route. So she got very into things that you're very familiar with: visualization, meditation, listening to Louise Hay, reading, Dr. Bernie Siegel, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, Caroline Myss, Anatomy of the Spirit, Dr. Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, and had all these books. And unfortunately, she had a lot of emotional trauma from my stepfather, who was very abusive, and she was starting to get better. And I saw that connection of how she would be great, and then he would beat her down. And I saw the connection between the emotions and the physically, she would just shut down. And she passed when I was 13. She was 38 years old.
Oh
And
my.
she ended up leaving me all these books that I just talked about. And these kids in school are reading Judy Blume and, Catcher in the Rye and whatever. And I'm like, Many Lives, Many Masters, and reading about, how we could heal ourselves through uh, all these holistic ways. And I thought, I never want to get sick. I want to help people. It's terrible what she went through. And so I was on this journey to be this healer. And I started studying with a shaman when I was 18 and got certified in like every modality, from somatic therapy to polarity therapy to yoga to Reiki to massage therapy, nutrition. I did it all. And then I started working in clinical practice. And then I got thyroid cancer myself when I was 31. And I was like, so that was something I had to deal with. And then after that, I ended up getting Lyme and then long COVID. So the way my practice work shifted, but I thought about a lot of the things that my mother had taught me when I was younger. And I was always using that in my work. And I always had this spiritual kind of bend in the way that I would see my clients. It wasn't just like, eat this, do that. Like there was always a spiritual part that came with it. But once I was really tested so much myself, I think that shifted the way I completely work with people. And now I work with intuition, and I speak to them in a very human way. And it's just like, it feels like the work I'm supposed to be doing, but I went through this, and now I can really understand and empathize with people who are experiencing these kind of issues.
Do you think your mom's in heaven guiding you?
Absolutely.
I do
I
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have brothers and sisters. My dad disappeared. I was an orphan. I moved out on my own when I was 16 in New York City, paying my rent. Like I've done everything on my own, and I always felt like she was like my imaginary friend, like just always with me every step of the way. I believe in reincarnation. I believe in the soul. I believe so. I just got chills right now.
I
Like
did too.
you did? Like, I believe so strongly she's in my presence, and she's looking out for me, and she's directing me, and she's helping me with my work. And, we just have a very special bond, even though she wasn't in my life very long. So,
She's to your right. Her spirit is to your right, and I'm getting weepy because I can see her,
mhm.
and we can talk to her if you want. But she is absolutely, she's so proud of you. She can't even stand it hardly. So where did you go at 13 when she passed?
Wow, now I'm getting emotional.
I know, me
Um,
too.
I Wow, I didn't expect this to happen. Um, I kind of bounced around to different relatives, and eventually I got uh, I ended up living with an aunt and uncle who I wasn't very close with. I barely knew on my father's side. My estranged father had a brother and his wife, and I lived with them for a little while, and didn't really work out very well. And I moved in with my mother's friend for a temporary period of time. I bounced around everywhere, and then at 16, I finally just moved out on my own. And I got a roommate in high school, and then I got my own apartment when I my senior year of high school in Manhattan. So
How do you do that when you're were you 18 early in your senior year? I mean, how did
Mhm.
somebody
I was
rent you an
17.
apartment at 17?
So yeah, I've lived in maybe I know this is so off topic, but I probably lived in 40 apartments in Manhattan because I had to keep moving like every 3 to 4 months because I had no credit because I was underage and I was paying things in cash and I never had a guarantor. So I bounced around. So I kept moving. So I kept living in these like sublets and all over the city and I just kept moving. So yeah, I did this until I eventually got married in my 20s and then got divorced and now I'm remarried. But yes, but I had a lot of bouncing around that I did. So I've lived a life.
You lived 9 lives by the time you were 20, it sounds like.
I did.
Goodness, God bless you. Wow. Tell us about somebody who's a client and they show up and they've got multiple whatever, autoimmune, whatever, and they're just exhausted and dejected and feeling like, what is the point with all of this? I mean, this is just miserable. I don't have energy to do anything. I'm out of money because I've spent it on all these healing modalities and nothing's worked so far. Walk us through what you do with a client like that. How do you come up with a plan to help them? And then if you can give us an example or two of somebody that's shown up with whatever symptoms and how you've been able to help them and where they are now in their journey.
Well, it's interesting because I've changed a lot. The old Danielle would do a lot of functional lab testing to really try to find the root cause and see where I can find it on their lab work. And then from there, if they were let's say they had Epstein-Barr, be like, okay, we're going to work on that and try to build your immune system, or let's work on the mold, or let's work on the heavy metals. And that was my whole approach. And while I think that works, I've found that the clients that I work with now, it almost doesn't matter. Like I stopped with all the testing because it doesn't matter if they have mold or it's good to know because you do need to work on some of it, but whether it's mold or whether it's autoimmunity or whether it's Lyme disease or whether it's chronic fatigue or whether it's glucose dysregulation, I find that many of them are living in such a sympathetic state. So I really go into I talk to them and I try to get to understand what was the event that caused this and try to get into understanding. And then we talk a lot about the nervous system. I introduce some of the concepts to them that I've shared with you with the Tai Chi and Qigong, also grounding, which I find very important.
For those that have heard grounding, but they have no clue what that means or how to do it, let's do that. And then I want you to go into a little bit about the vagus nerve part of the equation, please.
Sure. So grounding is also known as earthing, and it's connecting to the earth, whether you are barefoot in the sand or the grass or you're holding onto a tree. It sounds a little woo woo, but truthfully, it is so amazing for the brain and feeling rooted. And I had something before called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, where and a lot of people after COVID, it just became like so many people had it, where you would stand up and your heart rate would go up and you'd have this tachycardia, like your heart rate would beat out of control and your blood pressure would drop and you felt like you would faint. And I became agoraphobic. It was hard for me to go to the office. I was still seeing clients, doing Zooms and feeling inside like I was in death's door. And doing the grounding really helped me feel very rooted. And I think a lot of people need to tap into that. So I'm super into grounding and getting out into nature.
Do the mats and the grounding sheets and, stuff like that for people that travel that don't have the opportunity to get outdoors because they leave at dark in the morning and they get back at dark in the evening, or they live in someplace that most of the year their land is covered in snow or
No, I
whatever.
get that. I actually had made a giant grounding mat for my house. Like it's I've never seen one so big. The largest grounding mat I've seen is the size of a yoga mat. I had one specifically made so I can do Tai Chi on. It's like the size of a king size bed. And I actually do my practices on there first thing in the morning before I get to the beach in the evening. So I think it does work to a degree. I don't think it works as well as nature. It's kind of like taking a supplement over eating food. Like you're going to get more of the food, but it is a good supplement to use that. But I also think there's other things at play. Like if you have a lot of EMF, electromagnetic fields in your house, really being careful with that. So maybe getting some blockers. There's things that you can do to prevent having so much of these frequencies going on because it's so unnatural and that can make us feel very dizzy. So the grounding really helps even with all this stimulation going on. So yes, I think it's not a bad idea to have I have the grounding sheets, the grounding mats. I'm not sure how well they work. I do have but I think the mats actually do provide some benefit and I right now as I'm talking to you, I'm upset I don't have one on my feet. I normally do, but I left it in my downstairs office. But I almost never go on my computer without sticking my feet under a grounding mat. So I think it is a good tool and it's worth having for sure.
I I sleep on a grounding sheet every night, a fitted sheet on my bed.
Oh, you do?
I do, and I have one. It's a strip. It's not the whole sheet, but I carry it with me when I travel, and so I'll lay it lengthwise on the over the sheets at the hotel,
Yes.
and especially if I've flown, when I lay down on it now, everybody listening and watching, you gotta have some skin on it, so don't wear your fuzzy-footed jammies, when you're laying on it, you gotta have skin touch it, but I feel tingles, especially after I fly. I'm I really am cognizant about wanting to ground after I'm in a tin tube for hours being pinged by radar and whatever else, and I can feel it for about 30 seconds, I'll feel tingles all over my body, and I know I'm grounding. What are some of the blockers that you think are good as far as the EMFs? And are EMFs real?
Some people have a Faraday cage, which, you can buy. There's another one that there's a company called Blue Shield that I have a friend who's like the EMF guy, and he told me that was like the one to get. So I have that, and then there's other companies. I have another one from Soma Vedic in my other apartment. There's several out there. You can even have a salt lamp by your bed and some crystals, which is not a bad idea. And you should turn off the Wi-Fi at night before you go to bed and not have your phone near you and or just turn it off. But if you have kids, I understand you maybe want to keep your phone on, but put it on airplane mode and shut down the Wi-Fi because there's a lot of free radicals that, it's like it's oxidative stress that we don't need. And we can't sometimes you don't feel it, but for people who are very sensitive, probably people listening to you, there's probably many empathic people, and they probably are sensitive to Wi-Fi. So it's a good practice to try to avoid as much as you can. And even on your phones, like I have the blockers, and I try to reduce my screen time as much as I can, even though it's so hard in this digital world. Like I'm guilty, like everyone else, of the scrolling and the posting and but I'm like, okay, like, there's a certain point I'm like, I have to stop because I know this is not normal. And when I'm away and I just go off the grid and just like detach from everything, gosh, do I feel so much better. And I'm sure you could relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so thanks for the grounding explanation. Now, let's go into the vagus nerve explanation because there's lots of talk about the vagus nerve, and I, for one, don't really even understand what all's going on with that. So, can you educate me and hopefully others listening?
Right. So the vagus nerve connects from the base of the spine down to the intestines. And it's responsible for regulating the parasympathetic nervous system. And people who find themselves, like, let's say, before it was even such a big thing, like I had nervous stomach as a kid, and that was like an issue. And that's a vagus nerve response. It's like the gut brain connection of being anxious, and then the vagus nerve is not. It's like poor vagal tone, and then having the digestive issues. But with the vagus nerve, you can deal with unexplained vertigo, not feeling grounded, migraines. There's so many things that the vagus nerve is responsible for. And with POTS, major issues with the vagus nerve. And so working on strengthening vagal tone will help with the relaxation response, can help your sleep, can help a lot of these issues. So there's ways to stimulate it. And yes, some people have heard you can do chanting, or that does work, or gargling. Um, for me, I have a red light that this is biohacking, but I do like it. But the red light, when it's like a full body red light, but when the red light hits your belly, it's actually good to stimulate the vagus nerve. So I'll sit there for a few minutes. Um, Tai Chi and Qigong, you do make sounds. And when you're making the sounds with movement, um, that is stimulating the vagus nerve. Also, there's a lot of expensive vagus nerve stimulators that people buy. And I don't like all these expensive gimmicks, gadgets or whatever. And I actually use a TENS unit that for $30 that people, use to see in a chiropractic office. If you look at the belly, it's like a face, or around the belly where the belly button is, and underneath the belly and on top of the belly, underneath the navel and on top of the belly button. And then you can't really see what I'm showing you right now, but there's like the fleshy part right around the belly button. If you put like 4 probes and you do just gentle stimulation on a low level and just relax into it while you're just breathing deeply, it can also stimulate the vagus nerve, and it sets your body into a more parasympathetic state.
What parasympathetic is the calm
And then the
state.
calm, exactly. So it's really good for that. So those are things I do. And then I do work on diet with people. So I haven't abandoned the diet.
Yeah, we're
But
going to get to that. I got questions for you on that too.
yes.
Couple more questions on the energy stuff.
Yeah.
Back to my question about, you have a client that comes in and they got all this stuff going on, and you talk to them and you figure out, okay, what's the root cause of this perhaps? And maybe it takes you several sessions to talk to them. What do you suggest that they do and how to do it? So do you suggest they get into the energy, the Tai Chi, the Qigong first, and then you add the other components, or do you add them all at the same time? Can you walk us through perhaps an example of a patient with whom you've worked and how you helped them and where they started and where they are now?
Right. Well, I try not to overwhelm, but it depends what they've done. If someone has no experience with nutrition and their diet is pretty lousy, then we will start with there's definitely, because the gut brain connection, you want to have a healthy gut microbiome, and nutrition is a big part of that. So I will start with nutrition and cutting out a lot of the inflammatory triggers, the processed foods, the sugar, the gluten, dairy for some people, the caffeine, the alcohol. And then even going further for someone who, let's say, maybe because they have so much inflammation, I may take away foods that are high in histamine. So that's another thing. And then possibly,
Such as
a lot of things that are fermented that are good for gut health for a healthy person, like bone broth, or kimchi we hear is so great, or um, kombucha tea and things like that, that are healthy for most people, are not healthy for a lot of people who have chronic illness. So I might take away those foods that could be triggering a flare, or someone who may have a lot of inflammation may have also issues with, for example, you could be following a paleo diet. And this was me for a long time. I was in the best shape of my life. I was always very fit before I got sick. And I ate a total paleo diet. I would say my diet was 80% vegetables, And then I would say like 20% protein. And then I would have like a little bit of carbohydrates, like Japanese sweet potatoes or maybe quinoa or something. But all those vegetables that were so healthy for me, now as I started to get sicker, and I see this with people who are chronically ill, they may have issues with the lectins in the vegetables, the oxalates, the things like that, that they were like, but it's vegetables. What's better than having, green juices and greens all the time and my spinach and this and that? And I'm like, well, for a perfectly healthy person, it's great for them. But for you, we're going to need to do a little elimination here. So I make a diet different for someone who's trying to lose weight versus someone who's dealing with chronic health symptoms, totally different. Also, I do think that glucose regulation is very important. So I may suggest that someone wears a glucose monitor for several months to see what's setting them off, because they may not understand, even if their lab work came back normal and their glucose and their hemoglobin A1C, which checks for diabetes and prediabetes, let's say it's in range, but it's not taking a snapshot of what's going on throughout the day. So it was funny, I noticed this on myself, like, I would have a green protein smoothie in the morning, which seems so super healthy, and when I was wearing the glucose monitor, because of, like, it was pea protein and it had the lectins and then all the oxalates with the spinach and all this stuff, my blood sugar was, like, through the roof and it was low glycemic, and I'm like, "How is this spiking my blood sugar?" And I always felt terrible after and dizzy, but I would never put it together. So if someone does that, they say, "Oh, yeah, this health food is actually making me feel really bad." And then to carry on with that, now maybe they have a stressor during the day. Maybe they have caffeine and everyone says, "Coffee's so good for you. It's an antioxidant." And maybe they have a coffee and it may be mold free and healthy, but now they're looking at their glucose monitor and it's beeping and they're like, "Why does my blood sugar look like this? Oh, wow. You know what? Like, your adrenals are not handling this coffee so well. That's a problem." And then later on in the day, they have a stressor because something's going on and they saw they were in an argument or they were in a bad mental space, and boom, their glucose goes up even more. And that's it's dysregulating their hormones. So like, that's information for me. So I like to work with that tool. I feel like a glucose monitor is something that I use with a lot of clients I work with. I don't subscribe to any one diet plan. Some people, I think things can be done temporarily. Like for a month, I may put someone on a low histamine diet. It doesn't have to be forever. And then someone else, I may say, you may do great for carnivore for 1 month, but I wouldn't suggest it long term. Let's see how you do if you get rid of all those plant toxins. And for 1 month, you just go carnivore, but that's it. And then you may be able to handle it as you get your nervous system in check. You're going to be able to take those vegetables back and tolerate them well. So each person's different. We kind of trial and error a little bit. But it's it's different for every single person.
Mhm. Why does the blood sugar spike when somebody's drinking a, quote, "healthy green smoothie" with lots of vegetables and stuff in it, and it's low glycemic, it doesn't have any sugar in it? Why does the blood sugar spike?
Because there are lectins in many of the greens, and they can be inflammatory for some people. And that can cause a response where it causes the inflammation and then it causes this glucose response. So it was shocking to me when I saw my diet was comprised of, it was very low carb. And I was like, well, why does my blood sugar look like this? I mean, like, I'm eating perfectly, but it wasn't perfect for me. So I really had to adjust that. And I noticed that other people I was working with, when we put the glucose monitor on them, they were seeing the same thing. And I thought, how interesting. And that was not something that I learned in school. It was something that I kind of learned by my own research after dealing with this whole chronic illness situation. And I was like, wow.
Well, and I think most people aren't aware that inflammation causes the blood sugar to rise.
Yeah.
And what's happening from a physiological standpoint? Why does the blood sugar rise when we ingest something that's inflammatory and or we're in a high stress situation? Why does the blood sugar rise? What's the blood sugar intended to do?
Well, the blood sugar is supposed to keep you stable, and I think it's trying to recalibrate when it's put out of whack through some kind of trigger or assault to the body, and it doesn't really know how to respond. And And stable blood sugar actually helps us to be regulated. And I think that it's sort of fighting with whatever kind of trigger it's receiving. So it's causing the sugar to rise, and it's in turn creating also these issues with our cortisol. And then
Going to ask, is it
yeah,
cortisol
it's
and
really intense.
norepinephrine and all that, trying to get that back in line?
Exactly. So all of it becomes this big cascade of like, it becomes a problem. And the remedy for when you see your sugar going up, de-stressing can also bring it back down very rapidly without even changing your diet. Like it's funny because we think of glucose dysregulation or high glucose like just with stressful events or to bring it down, have a high protein snack. Well, that may help, but I got very into using a flotation tank for a while, or even just doing meditation and wearing the monitor, and I would have this high reading, and then I would go sit in a flotation tank and I would just relax or do a meditation for half hour, 45 minutes. And I would see I was at 150 and then I'm back at 80. So just the stress response can control how our glucose is, and that's also related and intertwined with cortisol, and that can roll over into our thyroid function, hormonal function, so many things. So it's really important to keep your glucose regulated.
When somebody is doing the diet thing with you and they're doing the Tai Chi and the Qigong, do they also want to incorporate aerobics and weightlifting kind of stuff? Or is it just all you have to do is the Tai Chi and the Qigong?
No, I think it's a good idea to do weight bearing exercises if you're strong enough. It depends who it is. If someone is really weak like I was, I would caution against it initially. Um as they because they could have this post exertional malaise for someone who's really weak. But once they start to regain their strength, I think as long as they're breathing properly and they're not, really killing themselves at the gym, I wouldn't say like do some, a lot of these like high intensity interval training workouts all the time. Like it may be too much, but doing some weight bearing exercises, even using bands and things like that are really good because we start to lose bone density over the age of 40, especially women. And it's really important to maintain that. So I think it's good to do those things. But I think for someone who's afraid of that burnout, and I've seen this for someone with chronic fatigue, and then they do something, a really strenuous workout or lift weights, and then they're in bed for 2 days, or they just like they collapse. They don't feel energized after, they feel terrible. So you have to know like who it is. And I really like to be gentle with people.
All right, I've taken you down 15 rabbit hole. So one more time, can you give us an example of somebody that came in that was really sick and they went through your program and how are they now?
So definitely people one example of someone who worked with me who did this protocol, who actually put someone on carnivore temporarily, wearing a glucose monitor, and then from that point, slowly coming off of it, reintroducing foods and reintroducing a grounding practice, really started to feel a lot of the neurological symptoms dissipate and get a lot of strength back. And this is not just one person, this is something that I really see. So as people start to do these things that maybe are so counter to what they've always learned, um, I start to see results of that because chronic conditions are very hard to manage. And just taking these steps really make a big difference. And then they kind of, I try to work with people and teach them. I don't like people to be reliant, but they can't work on themselves. So once they understand these things, they kind of have the tools to help themselves moving forward. So people just start to get back their energy, and they start to feel more grounded, and even like I've seen a situation where like a spouse will say to me like, thank you for working with my wife, like she's a lot better, like it's good to have her back. And that's really gratifying to me to see that.
You work with a lot of models to get them in there. And you look like a model for those of you that are listening. She looks like she just walked off the runway.
Oh, please. But thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to hear about what you do with them. But first, I want to hear about what are some of the mistakes or misunderstandings that uh, all of us, I mean, I think I went on my first diet when I was 12, that we've been doing all of our lives that we think are healthy, but they're sabotaging us and we're just clueless about it. What are some examples of that?
So, one of the really big ones is that there's so much emphasis on health foods that the falsification of what is branded of a health food and it's not really a health food. And people think if something is labeled as a health food, you kind of have a license to eat as much as much of it as you want because it's promoted as healthy. So overeating health foods is probably the number one mistake.
What kind of health foods? What are you talking about? Granola bars, protein shakes?
Yes. Acai bowls, granola bars, loaded protein shakes, overdoing it with the avocado toast. Avocado is great. I eat avocado, but it's like overdoing it with that. Or if, let's say, they even decide, okay, I want to go on a low carb diet, but then the protein they're eating like 10 ounces of protein. And it's just like, you're not a bodybuilder. Like it's too much. And so it's the overeating of healthy foods. Most of the people I've worked with are not like the burger and fries eating crowd. Like they're intelligent. They go to the best gyms. They do yoga. They do Pilates. They want but they're having the frozen yogurt or the next boxed treat from the health food store that's like some gluten free cookie, or they drink the oat milk lattes. And I'm like, no, it's like just if you eat real foods rather than finding the new trendy health food that they think they can overdose on, that's what's problematic. It's like going back to basics. Like eating real food and really cooking yourself, It's like stop eating these I guess these fake foods, It's like the smoothie bars, how they have a selection of all these type of bowls that have all this crap in them. I mean, I was I sorry, but I worked for a restaurant that was like a very cool restaurant in the West Village in Manhattan, and I had to do the help with the menus and the calorie counts, and they wanted to have it on display because it was like health food, fast casual, and the loaded bowls of everything and the salads that they had, and I was like, "Guys, this is like over 1,000 milligrams of sodium. It's like 42 grams of fat. The salad is like 1,300 calories. Like, I'm just telling you the truth." And they ended up, after working with me and paying me, they ended up deciding to not put anything on the labels because it would have dissuaded people. So I think like people think a salad's just a salad.
What was in that loaded salad bowl with all that stuff in it?
It's like it's so many proteins like chicken, cheese, edamame, then, you got some maybe nuts in there, and then you got the avocado, and then you have it's all healthy stuff. It's all healthy, but combined together, it's just too much in one sitting. If you went to Europe, people don't eat like that. They eat like a normal portion. It's like they can eat more, and actually, even if they're having the gluten, it's just such a different quality in Europe. It's the different quality food. It's fresh, but they eat small. You get a serving of something and it's normal. So we'll eat something healthy, but we do everything so big in America. It's like, and it's too big. So it's just, and I'm not telling people to diet by any means, but it's like, they're overdoing it. And there's always like the new fad thing. Oh, I can eat as much of this as I want. No, you
Well,
can't.
protein, the experts, I'm using air quotes, are saying eat a gram of protein for every pound of weight you wanna weigh. I'm thinking, I can't eat that much protein
Yeah.
based on my weight. What is that all about? You're obviously not a fan of that, I would imagine, but what's that all about? They're saying that that's how you lose fat and you gain muscle and all of that. That's big in the zeitgeist right now.
It
Eat a
is.
pound
It really is.
eat a gram of protein. And so then people go to protein shakes, and on every protein shake that I've ever seen, it says, "This is not a diet food," which
Oh,
means
yeah.
if you use 15 scoops of this to get 150 grams of protein, you're gonna gain a bunch of weight.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's always the thing. I'm like, you're just not a bodybuilder. And the other problem that people think if they do these like heavy workouts, that it just like license to you whatever you want. Like, oh, I just did this crazy berries boot camp, or I just, did this whatever kickboxing class. And now they come home and they have this big meal. It's like most people I work with that have been overweight and came to me, like work out a lot, but they just overeat too much. Sometimes I say, if you're going to do a workout at nighttime and that means that you finish at 9 p.m. from your workout and now you're going to go home and eat dinner and then go to sleep, I'd probably tell you, like, if you're in a city where you can actually walk home and not drive, just walk home from work, get home by 8 o'clock and just have like a light meal and let that be your workout. Forget this workout class. It's not going to do anything for you. Like you're doing more damage by the meal you're having after this intense class. Just it's not even worth it. So it's like I just think people over exercise and then they overeat. So if you're going to do a heavy exercise and you like that kind of stuff, do it early in the day. But I'm not into like a fan of exercising late at night. Plus, it raises your cortisol levels at night, makes it harder to sleep. And just all around, I don't like heavy workouts at night. But I just think that if you're gonna do that, then just be prepared to like, have some scrambled eggs and go to bed, like, but don't have a whole meal. And so it's so I work with people on meal timing too, helping them decide when are they gonna work out, what kind of workout is best for them, do they need cardio? Do they not? I mean, everyone is individual, but it's a lot of confusion. And they're like, but I work out and I eat so healthy and I eat from Whole Foods and like, what's up? And then usually after talking to them for a little while, I can kind of figure out what the problem is.
How do you feel about intermittent fasting? That's very, very, what I'm trying to say, it's being pushed right now, intermittent fasting from a health standpoint, and especially with you being involved with functional medicine. And they say, eat like 1 meal a day or eat just within a 5-hour or 7-hour window during the day and fast the rest of the time. What's your opinion of all of that?
So for some people, I understand the concept of intermittent fasting and how it promotes autophagy, which is eating the senescent, the kind of zombie cells in your body that are there. And if your body has nothing to eat, that it eats those bad cells and it could have good health benefit. I understand the concept behind it. And some people say it helps with their glucose levels. Some people. But if someone's dealing with a thyroid issue, adrenal fatigue, um, or they're having trouble sleeping at night or their hormones are off, it does more harm than good, in my opinion. So I think some people are going to give me, like they would fight with me on this one. I think some people do well with it. I think it depends on who you are. And I find a lot of men do better with intermittent fasting, to be quite honest, because women, the way we deal with our hormones and how important it is to have good hormone regulation for us to feel well and have energy. And if you're one of those people, especially like your adrenals are just wiped out because you're so stressed, should probably eat within an hour of waking in the morning, just for that demographic. So it depends who you are. But some people it's okay. So I'm not going to fully knock it. I think it has merit. I just think there's a lot of people who are doing things blindly and think it's good for them. And I'm like, whoa, like you're not a candidate for that. So I think we can't just follow a trend that we see on social media without really, I think you should work with someone who can understand the intricacies of like what your specific case is.
And what about the concept of you eat and then you exercise? It used to be that you eat after you exercise, but now I think it's more mindset of you eat and then you exercise because then it helps your blood sugar stay stable.
It could, but I would say if you're going to eat before you exercise, have something really small, like maybe a little bit of protein, but maybe a hard boiled egg, or have a little bit of, if you want to have a few turkey slices or a little bit of almond butter, something like that, just so your blood sugar is stabilized enough that you can do your workout. But I tend to find that eating after is better. And also for if you're talking about purposes of maintaining a good weight, if you eat before you work out and then you do like a workout, people tend to eat double meals. Like I've seen this in breakfast time. So like even if it's healthy, I've worked with people and they would have like I don't know, maybe oatmeal in the morning, and then they would go to the gym and they do their workout at 8 o'clock in the morning. So they eat at 6:37, go to the gym. And now by 9:30, they are starving and they can't make it to lunch. So now they have another meal and it negates their workout in the morning. So if they just said, okay, I'm gonna do a 7 a.m. workout, but I'm going to just have a tablespoon of almond butter just to get myself up and going, and then I'm gonna eat afterwards. I think that's better if you can handle it, if you feel like your blood sugar can take it. But if you have a little bit of fat and protein, most people can tolerate that.
Hmm. All right. So tell us about all the models with whom you work. Do they just eat 5 almonds all day long and that's all they eat?
No, it's really I mean, yeah, there are models like that. I think it's changed a lot. A lot of models are more health conscious. Now, I modeled myself, like, back in the twice, in the '90s, like, late '90s, and then also again when I was in my 30s, I modeled. But I feel like in the '90s, it was like I never put anything in my nose. I was never into drugs, but it was a very, like, cocaine, drug, like, the eating nothing era. I remember living in Europe in a model apartment, and girls would, like, eat a piece of cheese, smoke cigarettes, and do cocaine. Like, that was back then. These days, it's very different. People are health conscious. The girls are drinking green juices. They're, eating much better, but they are the ones who want to be fitter. A lot of them still are overeating the health foods. Let's say they go to an agency and the booker says, I really want to book them, but they can't lose the weight. So I always will do it in a healthy way, but they're probably on that healthy eating, overeating health foods, or they may just drink too much alcohol, which is another problem too because, they're going to the parties, all the club promoters are inviting them out, the pretty girls are going to all the restaurants, and they're drinking too much. So I have to get them off the alcohol.
Just bottom line for everybody that's listening, how do we know that we're eating foods that are healthy for us and in the right quantity? How much does intuition come into play? And how do we know that what we're getting from our intuition really is trustworthy?
That's a good question. I think that intuition, it plays a very big role in that, and that's why I really like the whole mindful eating and seeing how you feel, because you could be given a diet or told that this is the best thing for you. But if you don't feel well when you're eating it, then it doesn't really matter what experts say. So I think you have to go by your energy levels, your vibration after you're eating it. You could eat something and feel dizzy or tired or just lethargic, or you could have something in it like really makes you feel well. So I think getting in tune with your body, a lot of people are not in their body. And once you get more in your body, you're going to know what fuels you and makes you feel good. So I'd say go by what you're talking about, like what you feel. And intuitive eating is really a big part of health.
Mhm. How does one, if they're clueless of how to do it, how does one get in tune with their own body? Is there something simple that they can do to begin the process that I know will grow over time if they focus on it?
So that's why I like the grounding so much. I think that's a great way to get in tune, and just closing your eyes and just even getting into your breathing and even scanning your body. And I'm very into visualization and meditation also. And when I am looking for an answer to something, I many times will just, if it's maybe not food from me, but for other people, really just breathing into it and feeling my body and asking the question as I'm grounding. And I think things start to get revealed, and you kind of know, like, this feels good. That doesn't, I mean, I can hold a pill of supplements that someone says great, and I can feel it and get into it. And no one has to do kinesiology on me, no muscle testing. And I'm like, mm-mm, this is not for me. Like, I just know because I'm in my body. But, everyone has that ability to do that. But I think the breathing and the grounding and tuning out a lot of the external is just good on so many levels, not just with their food, but making better choices in so many areas of their life once they get to know what feels good to them.
What I started doing is I just ask myself, I have a conversation with myself. I say, self, no, I just ask, is it in my best interest to eat this? Is it in my best interest to drink this? And it's that first thing that comes in a nanosecond. And that's spirit guiding us. It's
Yeah.
our internal, it's our spirit, God, the universe, all the angels, all the saints, all the whatever,
Yeah.
loved ones, spirit guides. And that I find is a really good way, especially in a restaurant, because
Oh,
restaurants have hidden stuff in them. And I gave up sugar 6 years ago, so if I eat something in a restaurant that has something in it that's got maybe a little bit of sugar in it that I don't know, oh my god. It just feels like my heart is just gonna beat right out of my chest, Danielle. It's like, "Oh my god." I end up doing, like, the 4-7-8 breathing, the box breathing, just to get my heart rate down.
I I understand that. I mean, I go to restaurants now and I'm always like, "Please don't kill me. Please don't have the waiter spit on my food. Can you have it simply grilled, nothing on it?" It's just like I go through the whole thing. But now it's kind of cool to say like I say I'm doing a cleanse, that sort of thing. And then suddenly, "Oh, you're cleansing?" And then everyone thinks that's cool. Like it's acceptable now. And that's just my line. I'm doing a cleanse and I need everything super clean. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
My son rolls his eyes. He's like, "Oh, for God's sakes, can you just order something off the menu without changing it?"
yeah,
"No, I can't. Sorry." And I've been doing that for a long time, and it just drives him nuts. It's
I'm right there
hilarious.
with you.
Last question, why do we incarnate?
I think we all have a soul correction. And that's just I mean, you know better than I do, so I don't want to tell you, but I think all of us, we have a mission here on this earth and we speak to our creator before we come down and we figure out what we need to do. And each incarnation is to make that correction for the growth of our soul. And we choose our circumstance. And that has always helped me to say like, why is it so hard? Like, come on. Then I'm like, okay, but I know I chose this and I chose my parents and I chose a situation and I chose this. So I really believe that we all we have to grow in this life. If you're not growing, then it's a wasted life. So people who walk through the world asleep and they don't want to see what's going on or they don't want to feel and they're numbing themselves with drugs and alcohol and all these things, you're not making your correction. So I think that's, what we're on this earth to do and to do kindness. And I think that's a huge part of what we're here for. And also for other people, because
Mhm.
it's not only for the growth of our soul, but we have other people, that we need to be here for to be a light to them.
Beautifully said. Wow, you are extraordinary, my girl. Good heavens. Wow, what an inspiration you are to me and to everybody that comes in contact with you. The work that you're doing is just magnificent.
Thank you.
And just your story, listening to your story, I'm so proud of you. And I just met you. So,
I'm so happy I met you and I found out what you do. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Like I just so fascinated by your work.
oh.
So thank you.
Tell everybody how they can learn more about you and your work, and I know that you have videos
Yes.
that are kind of like a membership thing that people can subscribe to.
Yes. So, my website is called that was my dog that sneezed. Soulhacker.com, SOULHAKKER.com. And I do have what's called a Daily Soul series, which are the different Qigong practices, a little bit of Tai Chi, but mostly Qigong that really helped me when I was struggling. And it's very good for the nervous system. Even if someone's just dealing with emotional issues and not ill, it's something that's very grounding. And also I'm also on Instagram as the Soul Hacker, again with 2 Ks.
Okay. Thanks, Danielle,
Thank you so
for
much.
joining us. What a delight. In the meantime, everybody's sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Florida, too, where Danielle is. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends.